Morning traders, welcome to another LAT Market Insights, and today all focus following off the Fed is going to move towards the Bank of England. It is time for the UK rate decision coming up. It's due at 12 o'clock today. I thought we'll just have a quick run through expectations for this meeting and what to be looking out for, and potential look at Euro Sterling. I think some opportunities perhaps ready to arise. So expectations for today. And we are looking at continuation of this rate hiking cycle, 25 basis point hike, pretty much nailed in. It's a unanimous, we're expecting at least a unanimous vote across the board. We can see here this vote rate hike, expectations at the moment 9v9. Of course, this rate hike expected off the back of continued higher CPI metrics. So we saw the last print come in at 9% versus 7%. Now, of course, the question here is, does that raise in inflation affect what Governor Bailey and the BOE do today, much the same as we've seen it with the Fed? So, of course, 50 basis point hike was expected from the Fed until all of about a week ago when that high inflation print came in on the Friday. And then there was a transition and a sudden pricing in of the 75 basis point hike, which of course we got last night. Now there's commentary coming forward from the BOE that we are expected to see further inflationary pressures in the months ahead until we move over into double digits and we cross over that 10% barrier. Now from a growth perspective point of view, recent surveys delivered by the S&P Global summarise what we already know. There's a difficult economic backdrop in the UK. We're likely to find ourselves in a stagflationary environment. Now, of course, stagflation, that unfortunate scenario when you find yourself going into a recession with very high inflation. Of course, that really does tie the central bank's hands as to what they can do next to try and bring that inflation under control. Very difficult, of course, to be raising rates when you're within that recessionary environment. And of course, those growth concerns coming off the back of, again, another miss. We saw the services metric slipping to 53.4 in May, which is quite a severe drop really, from 58.9. So certainly some concerns ahead here. Very real risk and threat now. Whereas near as in recession, it just hasn't been given the name yet here in the UK. The battle, of course, for today, does that result in a slightly more dovish BOE, or does their sole focus remain on getting inflation under control, in which case we're going to have to see that more hawkish rhetoric come through. Now, in terms of guidance so far from the MPC itself, Governor Bailey's flagged concerns pay growth will feed into inflation, and it's prepared to raise rates again if needed. So currently at the moment, Chief Economist Pill is pushing towards another 725 basis point hikes by year end. So that would certainly strike a more hawkish tone. However, of course, with that stagflationary fear, really are very tricky one to call today here where they're going to sit. Okay, very difficult to get hawkish with that risk of stagflation, but of course inflation, that runaway metric, which is going to push them into being potentially more hawkish. Focus in terms of the releases come 12 o'clock, probably not so much the rate decision, unless of course that comes out with a surprise lift and we get a 50 basis point hike, which no real discussion of that at the moment. It will purely be if there's any follow on from what we saw the Fed do yesterday evening. Really, it's all eyes towards if we have any dissenters through the MPC. So we'll be looking at this unchanged. If we can see this unchanged drift and we can get one or two dissenters in there, then perhaps we will start to see some reaction in these charts. And of course, as always, the minutes will be key to try and ascertain if we have that more hawkish or dovish tone. So economic indicators all pointing towards recessionary territory, incredibly high inflation, making life very, very difficult here for Governor Bailey and the Bank of England. And of course, employment figures, one of the biggest drivers for that. And we've seen unemployment rates rise from 3.8 to 3.7. And alongside that, not only the unemployment rates, but also the headline earnings growth cooled from 6.8, cooled to 6.8 from 7. So all the numbers there, the economic numbers at the moment, going the wrong way, and it's going to be a battle here of, do we remain dovish to try and offset the recessionary risks, or are we going to turn hawkish to try and tackle the inflation figure. And as it stands at the moment, it was still looking pretty much nailed in for a 25 basis point hike. But we must be on the lookout here for the any dissenters in the vote. And also the forward guidance for how many of those hikes come year end. At the moment, market's pricing those 7 25 basis point hikes by the year end. Okay, now let's just come across the chart. We'll focus in here in particular on euro sterling, just on an hourly chart. Now we can see generally of late we've seen euro strength has been sterling weakness, as you know, relative certainly to some of the other central banks. The BOE still remains relatively dovish. However, we have seen a rapid repricing yesterday, big sell-off here in euro sterling after the FOMC last night, really. And now we're just looking, we're taking a little bit of a breather. So we're trading in a really interesting range. We've got really strong support trading down through here. We can see that 84, 85 region. And we're just holding at the moment these previous highs at 85, 87. And we're just coming off now a bit of resistance, which was the previous high set back here on the 12th of May, which was 86.18. Now, typically coming off this strong selling, we've almost got a little bit of a flag formation here. And that flag formation would expect continuation here to the downside. Now, that would be implying sterling strength, and that would be a hawkish BOE. Most hawkish outcome today, highly unlikely, but should it happen, would be a 50 basis point hike. A surprise hike, you know, much the same, out of expectation, out of consensus, similar to the Fed last night. Now, the major difference there, of course, the Fed was very much discussed a week ago and markets had the time to price it in. But as of yet, there's been no real discussion or interest. There's been no real discussion or interest in that 50 basis point hike from the BOE. So I think we've got to stay firm on the 25 basis point, except there is the risk that we could get the 50 basis point hike. If we do, that would certainly act as a strong catalyst to see us make our way down through this low. This is the low of yesterday, basically, so 7 o'clock last night. So that would be through the lows of the day here to make a run down towards this next level down here. Goes against the trend, but in line with sort of the short-term sentiment and momentum, which is very much bearish here. I've just drawn a blue box around the range here, which is really the most recent sort of high and low, where I think we're looking for breaks either way. Should this remain dovish, I think it's, you know, as an opportunity for this trend, general uptrend which has been established here, to continue to move to the top side. And then it comes down to a battle of who's got more work to do here. Christine Lagarde with the ECB, or Andrew Bailey here with the BOE. And I think at this point, given that the BOE have already started their rate hiking cycle, Christine Lagarde potentially further work to do. So a dovish BOE today, I think, potentially sees us up through these highs, and then we can have a run at the highs of yesterday, which was set early yesterday morning, 87.17 up through here. Okay, so I think they're the two trading opportunities. Nice little range. Be very cautious ahead of this date. You've got another couple of hours yet to run until we see ourselves through to that 12 o'clock release. But focus back on that economic calendar. We'll be looking to see, can we get any descent through here, and do we get any surprise rate hike, and what's the general commentary, forward guidance coming through to the rest of the year? Do we tackle the risk of recession or inflation first? Please do join us. I'll be back later once this data has been through. We'll have a review, see how this has come out, see the impact on the market, and see if there were any trading opportunities to have been had. Thanks for joining us. I'll speak to you all soon.